It is Sunday, September 15th, 2019, and this is the Product Mentor Talk. Today, we are joined by one of our mentors, Tauheed Ahmed, and he is going to be doing a talk on the superpower that sets apart highly effective product managers from the rest. Just to briefly explain our format, the Product Mentor program was stood up to help create better product people by pairing experienced product professionals with people looking to advance their product capabilities. Each of the product mentors have many years of wonderful and diverse product experience, from B2B to B2C to physical products and even service-only products. We're also joined by the mentees in the current session. If everyone can just quickly wave hello and make sure your video is on so we can see you waving. Thank you. Now we will go around the room, do some introductions, your name, where in the world you are, your current role, and whether you're a mentor or a mentee. I'm going to call on people in the order simply in which I see them in my window. So we are going to start actually with our speaker, Tauheed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tauheed Ahmed. I am a Senior Director of Product. In recent times, managing client experience products for both web and mobile. And before that, early in my career, I actually started out as a software engineer, and then eventually figured out my sweet spot is product. And I never looked back. So really excited to be here today.
Thank you. Fabiola.
Hi there. I'm Fabiola, head of product of Runa HR, a software as a service to run payroll in Mexico City. I'm a mentee. I'm probably one of the only people from Latin America here.
Candice.
Hi, I'm Candice Zhang. I'm based in New Jersey. I'm a mentee in this program, and I'm the lucky one having Tauheed as my mentor. And I'm currently a head of the product in a company called 10-4.
Paul.
Hello, everyone. Paul Hurwitz. I'm based in the New York City area, VP of product in a couple of different consulting roles, and I am a mentor in the program.
Ines.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ines. I'm a product manager in a biotech company, and I am representing a mentee in this program.
John.
Hi there, I'm John Masterson, and I am a mentor in this group. I'm based here in London, and I am the Chief Product Officer for a startup called ImproveWell.
As a reminder, please post your questions to the Q&A section at theproductmentor.com/live. As questions come in, I'll jump in and pass them to our mentor during the talk. We prefer questions during the session. Don't leave them to the end. Sometimes they get missed if they get left to the end, so don't be shy. Again, go to theproductmentor.com/live to submit any questions you have to our speaker. And I am Jordan Bergtraum, head of product at Equip ID, your moderator for today's live stream. I will now hand control over to our speaker, Tauheed. Take it away.
All right, thank you, Jordan. Hello, everyone. So today I wanted to focus on one of the key soft skills that I feel product managers really need to stand apart from the rest of us, the okay product managers. So how do you can learn all the tools of the trick. You can learn technical skills, design skills, marketing skills, business skills. And then over the years that I've been doing product management and managing and mentoring, one of the soft skills that I feel really sets apart the really effective product managers from the rest is what I really wanted to focus in today's talk. So the topic today is the superpower that sets apart highly effective product managers from the rest. How are we going to do this today? So I am going to first talk about and convince you that as product managers, we do need superpower. Then talking into to be a really successful product managers, what is that one or two skill that will really help you be really effective. I want to go into the detail of really understanding what do we mean to make sure that we are all on the same page when we talk about that skill. And most importantly, getting into the details and talking about scenarios where you should really apply that skill to get ahead and to really win. And finally, I wanted to make sure that you have something to go, some easy reminders that you can take after this talk and you can really apply to your life. So let's get started. So first of all, I think product managers need superpowers. And why is that? As we all know, product managers are expected to be multidisciplinary. You have to communicate really well the visions and the goals of the company. You really have to have a good knack for technical knowledge so that you're comfortable talking to your engineering partners. You also have to have some creative knowledge and have enough opinion so that you can talk with your business colleagues, design colleagues, and really decide what's the best experience that your users really need. So you pretty much have to have some amount of knowledge in all these varying disciplines. We also know and very familiar with this quote that product managers all through the day wear many hats. And it's the same idea that you are multidisciplinary, but at the same time, you are kind of overseeing a complex set of goals and changes and outcomes and all the different players who own different pieces. And you, for whatever reason, needs to kind of oversee the whole story, right? When there is a need, you are the firefighter because something happened in production and you really need to solve things quickly. You have to be sometimes ruthless at prioritizing and deciding what features to build and what features to ignore because you don't have unlimited resources. You have to be really careful and in communicating with stakeholders when you already know that a lot of the times you are needing to say no to one stakeholder and do somebody else's work. So again, you at the end overall manage and own and lead this cross-functional team that you need to depend on to really build a good product. And again, as I said, not that we all want to, but very frequently, we all need to say no a lot because you, again, deal with and work with many different stakeholders. And given your limited resources, you cannot work on everything at the same time. So you have to be in a position where many times you are saying no to one party and then and tomorrow you say no to somebody else. So knowing how widespread and even demanding this role is, you would think that product managers must be the king of the world. They must have all the powers they need because they have such a tremendously difficult job to do. But as I think most of us already know, that is really not the case. You wish, but it isn't. And if you look around and read through product articles and follow product blogs, there are a lot of articles and thought process that went into kind of this dilemma, right? There are jokes. The writer of Lean Product Playbook, Dan Olson, had this funny comment to say that you're all familiar with Spider-Man and the famous quote about with great power comes great responsibility. But then again, as PMs, many of us feel that with great responsibility comes no power. Then again, this is a very common experience with many of us, and even in product managers who are in very senior roles. It's also very common the way the product departments are structured in many places, where you may feel that you are a very senior person in the company, but you don't really have direct authority over some of the people that you are dependent on to deliver your product. So then this is the dilemma, right? How do you lead a cross-functional team to build amazing products when you have no formal authority? Here's an idea. Lead like superheroes. What do? They lead, but they don't have formal authority. But then you say, but they got superpowers. And then the question is, okay, you know superheroes. And if you're a fan like me of Pixar, you probably know these superheroes really well. There's Jack, who is super fast. There is Elastic Woman, who can grow and shrink. There's Dash, who's a shapeshifter. There's Violet, who can produce force fields and turn invisible. And then Mr. Incredible is just incredible. And wouldn't it be amazing if we product managers had these powers? Imagine all the time where different stakeholders were chasing you because you didn't prioritize their work. Where was this force field when you really needed it? So, okay, the reality is that we're not there yet. We don't know how to get these powers, but maybe one day we will. But until then, what is that special skill or power that you can really have that can make you a super PM? And this is kind of the main focus of my talk here. And based on my experience and all the years of juggling through a cross-functional team and really understanding what helps people really make a difference and how do you have good influence, my proposal is high empathy is that magical power that product managers need to really practice to be super product managers. And you are thinking, okay, that sounds not rocket science. So let's get into the detail a bit. And I want to understand everybody really understands and are on the same page when I mean high empathy. What do I really mean? So what is empathy? Empathy, so going back to the basics, empathy is your ability to understand or understand somebody else's perspective. It is also your ability to feel others' pain. It is also your ability to put yourself in others' shoes. And not only that, but it's also your ability to make others feel supported. And when the time comes, they need to know that you have their back. And finally, empathy also means that you don't make decisions just through a logical, analytical mind, but you also use your heart. So not ignoring the human elements of decision making. So what are the different places that you can apply empathy? Probably the most common that we hear about applying empathy as a product manager is really understanding and winning customers. And this is something that all of you should be very familiar with. And what do we mean by that? As product managers, that many of you already know, one of your main responsibility is really understanding your target persona, how they feel, what are their pain points, what do they like, what do they dislike, what annoys them, and to really get into the deep and really understand how can you build and cater a product specifically into solving that very specific problems. So this is something that I think we have all heard of and read about in our journey in product management and elsewhere also. And that is all good. But my focus of this talk is actually not really this. What I want to say is applying empathy is required in a much broader scale and not just during customer development, but pretty much in many other aspects of your product management life. So, and the reason I say it is, as many of you probably already know, just having customer empathy doesn't guarantee product success. And why is that? Because product management is very much a team sport. Building products that customers love is possible only through a carefully coordinated and synchronized play among all stakeholders. You cannot do this yourself. So product managers can achieve that coordinated and synchronized play by practicing high empathy, because it allows them to cultivate a support network that's indispensable to launching amazing products. And I really want everybody to reflect on what I just said, and I'm going to rephrase the same thing again. The most effective PMs have the most effective support network. And what do I mean by that? Their managers, first of all, trust them, support them, back them, and are invested in their success. And their stakeholders and colleagues have the faith in them, equally care about each other's success, and collaborate towards achieving a common goal. So again, highlighting the fact that this is a team job and a team play is what's required to really build successful products. But then all this about having support from your managers and senior leadership and having the trust and the faith from your colleagues and stakeholders, all that sounds amazing. But how do you do that? And what I'm saying is that you don't get it by default, and you shouldn't expect it by default. You have to earn it. You have to earn that trust and support first so that you, over time, develop that support network. And this is where empathy is really important in my mind, because the best way to really build that support network and really to even earn that trust is by applying empathy in every interaction in your product management journey. And this is really the one thing that I want everybody to kind of take this out of this talk, that it is empathy shouldn't be talked about only during customer development, but it is about the whole ecosystem and how you're managing the entire product development lifecycle, even before you start building a product. Because this is so much of a relationship management job that unless and until you build the right relationships in the organizations, you will not be able to be making great products. So then we talked about customer development. So then what else is there? So what are other potential scenarios beyond customer development where you can really apply empathy? So let's look at some examples. So how about I just told you that all through your product management lifecycle, you have to apply empathy. But let's take a step back. Maybe some of us are just planning to move into product or really early in the career. And I want to emphasize that you have to start really early. You can apply empathy and have a very successful outcome while even you're trying to get hired. And what do I mean by that? So when we are first going out and looking for a product job, assuming you all know what we mean by the overall and the main principle of product management about understanding your target customer's need and really build a product that caters to that need, applying empathy in your job search process is really nothing really that different. It is about you realizing that in this case, you are the product yourself and your recruiter is the customer. And so you really empathize with the recruiter. Not too long ago, as I talked about the exercise of building an empathy map, and you understand their need and their pain point, the fact that they're probably looking at thousands of resumes and they don't have more than 15 seconds to browse through your resume and really find a good fit for that role. So you really understand their needs, their pain points, exactly what they're looking for, and you try to cater not just your resumes and cover letters, but all the interviewing, all the interaction points. What are the key information that you really need to give the recruiter? have you formatted and organized your resume or cover letter or your LinkedIn profile in a way that makes their life really easy? It's about you wanting them to succeed in finding the right match, which makes their life easier, which will eventually make your life easier. So as I'm saying, that you have to kind of look at every single scenario, every single touch point in your life, and kind of really trying to understand how do you optimize that scenario by applying empathy. So let's say you were really empathetic and you found a job. What's next? Let's say this is like your day one in the job, or you're very early, or a junior person in a company, in a product team. So as I have been already mentioning, that the product management is so much about relationship management, and having the right network, having the people who have trust and faith in you is everything before you can do anything else. So building and making the right impression is extremely important. So what are some possible advice in that situation? So first of all, it's important to really acknowledge that if you just joined a company, you probably know the least. And acknowledge that situation and own it. It is also about not rushing to judgment and be the listener first. Maybe you had worked somewhere else and you thought that in this new place, people are just really inefficient. They don't have the right processes. And you're wondering why things are structured this way. Why did they use this really outdated way of solving problems? And you want to rush into suggesting, hey, let's do this other way, which I know is better. And this is where I want you to hold, take a pause, and realize that how your other new team members might take that. The fact that you are this new person in the group coming in, not fully understanding the context that they live in, and you're already suggesting changes. And my suggestion is be empathetic in their situation. First and foremost, ask questions, show your willingness to learn, and really understand the reality of their context, and to really understand that if they have a very inefficient process, why is that? Is it because they're just not good at their job? Or are there other situations that's beyond their control which made things that way? And that is really applying empathy, right? You're first trying to understand that what could be the pain points they are going through before you start judging them. And that's kind of really important. And when you approach a new job or a new community or a new team this way, they really understand the good intention that you have in your mind, the collaborativeness of that approach, and they understand, and they eventually become good friends because of your thoughtfulness. So what else? Now getting into, okay, you've been at a job for some time, and other than customer development, as we have already talked about and we all know of, what other areas you apply empathy? And this is, again, one of the key areas, as I talked about, is that this is how you build the support network that you really need, because you're dependent on all these other stakeholders to get your job done. And this key area is really applying very intentional empathy when you work and interact with your stakeholders. So what are, as assuming that most of us are digital product managers, some of them are probably hardware product managers, but in general, in a most frequent cases, what are the main stakeholders that we as product managers really have to interact a lot? First and foremost, there's your manager, who is always a stakeholder. And so how do you apply empathy in that relationship? This is also to realize that first thing that you need to understand is what your manager really needs from you to succeed in his or her role. And by that, what I mean is before you start demanding things from your manager, you also need to understand that what can I do that makes their life simpler, easier, which in turn will make my life easier. And this is also going a little deep into not just staying at the surface and doing weekly reports and monthly status reports, but really trying to anticipate before situations happen and really trying to understand that if I can make my managers or my senior leadership's life easier by understanding exactly what they need from me and what time, that makes me really valuable in the company, because that proves that I have that insight and I don't necessarily need directions all the time. I am self-sufficient and I can go and solve problems on my own. And I feel that a lot of the time, especially junior people starting out in the career, they kind of miss this point. And they think that the manager is there always to take care of them, look over them, give them orders and directions. And this is where some maturity and wisdom comes into play for when you kind of tackle this situation by saying that, let's see how I can make lives of people around me easier, because that makes me more valuable. And finally, and also obviously, which is again very common, your and your manager's relationship is obviously one of the critical relationships that kind of defines your career, and your success depends on it. So again, being proactive at every situation. If there are things that are not working out, your manager has a completely different style of work than you do, and you're just thinking that I need to just quietly do whatever my manager wants, it's probably not true. Most likely your manager is actually kind of too busy, as they probably had a bigger scope in their work or the things that they need to worry about. So you need to be the more proactive ones and reaching out and starting that conversation that something is not working out, or make him or her understand that if we change our working model this way, I would be more productive. Don't wait for your manager to initiate that conversation. You be the more thoughtful one to initiate it. And by doing this, you show and prove to your manager that how proactive you are and how intentional you are about your actions, and you really want this to work. So that's first, right? That's again, going into a job, one of your most critical relationship is your understanding with your manager. Then what? I would say next to that, for many of us product managers, probably one of the most critical stakeholder group that we work with are software developers and software engineers. So this is interesting, and it really depends on what kind of a background you come from. I happen to come from a software engineering background, so I always had an easy time to go into a product role and actually gain the credibility among engineers very quickly. But that's not always the case with all product managers, because we come from all different backgrounds. And so understanding and knowing who owns what, where are the boundaries, it's really important. And it's having an agreement on that is crucial, because this is probably one of the most key relationship you need to maintain during your work in that company and in your product role. So what are some of the main points? Software engineers own the decision on the technology to use, the architecture, the infrastructure design, then choice of programming language, and let them do what they're best at doing. It is possible that you probably understand those concepts, maybe almost as the same or even equally well, but realize that that's not your role there. And it is really critical for product managers to understand that you are there because you own the overall responsibility of saying, what should we build and why are we building it? Then you collaborate with software engineers, but then they own ultimately the decision of how we are going to build it, especially when it comes to technology decisions. And many of you are probably already familiar with, we heard a lot about in the last call about stepping onto toes. This happens a lot. So having a very clear dialogue with your engineering team, your engineering leader upfront, that what works and what doesn't, how do we come to a compromise when there are decisions with two parties having two very strong opinions. You need to find out that balance and have an agreement on how do you go about solving those problems. And again, I think there are some common situations that we all know is because product managers are not managing or do not have direct authority on engineers, your best ammunition is logic that's backed up with data. So that's exactly how you should negotiate with your engineers when somebody comes and says that we need to build this technology this way because we have done this before and I know this is how it works. And if you, for whatever reason, do not believe in that, don't you think that there's a better way of doing it for your end users? You look at your analytics platforms and you pull up reports and data to kind of see that if you can convince the engineering team with the data that there might be another way that could be better. But then again, doing all of these respectfully, knowing where their strengths are and knowing what your own weaknesses are in terms of knowledge, having that mutual respect and having this conversation, which hopefully most of the time is based on data when you have the data available. And finally, it's also about really building the empathy. Many of us product managers don't come from a technology background. So how do you really understand what they go through? And a good way is be really proactive and show that you have the interest to learn what they go through by taking programming classes. Or a lot of the companies, it's really common, they would do lunch and learn. And you can really ask your team, is anybody willing to give a talk? Because they're using this very specific technology that you would really love to understand more. And this shows that you care, and that goes a long way. And I suggest that in pretty much any stakeholder groups that you're working with, that really try to understand what their job is like. So we talked about software engineers. What's next? Another very common stakeholder group that we always end up working on are designers. And here in this talk, I'm going to focus more specifically about UX designers. And the reason being, I feel the product managers and UX designer has the most overlap in terms of goals and responsibilities. Product managers try to understand the user pain points and really figure out how to solve their problem. UX designers also take a very bird's eye view of really understanding what the client is really trying to solve. Yes, a lot of the considerations are more about user interaction or visual elements, but it is still, they also are very close to, their mindset is very close to a PM. And it is very common that a lot of UX designers go on to eventually become product managers because they figured out that's kind of their sweet spot. So this becomes tricky in many companies and in many teams, is that there's a lot of stepping onto each other's toes, and it is very common. And I would say some level of argument is healthy and it is intentional. Because you have a certain agenda of what your definition of success is. They would have a certain definition of what success means to that UX designer. And you are supposed to have that healthy level of argument. But what really helps from my experience is, again, early in the beginning, really have a discussion that, hey, you know what, I try to approach my prioritization this way. You seem to have a similar approach. How are we going to break the ties, or how are we going to agree to disagree sometimes when it is necessary? And Where is the line where I make the call here and then you take on? Having this very clear conversation is extremely important, because I've seen this in many companies that I have worked with. This is a very common scenario. Again, as I'm saying, because the role overlaps really a lot with a technical product manager and a UX designer, especially if you're building product that has a lot of user-facing components in it. And similar to software engineering stakeholders that I talked about, it is the same thing for product managers. If you do not come from a design or design-oriented background or a creative background, you really need to put some effort into building the empathy towards your designers, really understanding the thought process they go through. And how do you do that? Nothing easier than you trying to take on learning kind of the principles of UX design, and what thought process goes into building a web application or a mobile application or even a hardware application. It's in today's world of all the MOOC platforms that we have, you have free knowledge everywhere. So if you have not done it, go take a design thinking class, go take a UX design class, go take a visual design class on your free time to really build the empathy and to really understand your designer's mental model. And that is, as you already know, is product management. You really want to get into their head. And here, designers are kind of your clients. So you're really trying to understand their needs, their likes and dislikes, so that you can really figure out the best way to collaborate with each other. Another very common stakeholder group that many of us end up working on are marketing managers. And as we all know, you can build an amazing product, but if you didn't have a thoughtful go-to-market strategy, nothing really matters. The customers are not going to find your product. They're not going to even know that you put in so much effort into building this. So a lot of the times, and this is a lot of the times kind of an interesting topic, depending on the company, sometimes marketing teams get involved in the tail end of the development process, where they're being involved more into figuring out communication strategy, social media campaigns, or some onboarding flow, because we rolled out something new or there is a new look and feel. So how do we get people warmed up to this new experience? But the challenge a lot of the times, because they are getting involved at the tail end, which is actually not ideal, is that you find out very late in the game that if you had understood kind of the principles and the strategies of how to sell product, how to very effectively communicate a new product, and if as a product manager you understood the concepts really well, you probably may have designed the product a little differently. Because as I said, you can build an amazing product. If you're not able to market it, you just wasted your company's effort and money. So knowing this, understanding this, you want to make sure that you engage with your marketing partners very early. Because a lot of the established processes, based on that, they end up interacting with you when your product is almost about to get rolled out. But you need to be proactive and actually involve your marketing partners very early, get their buy-in very early, make them understand what your goal is, what are you trying to optimize in your product, and see if they agree or disagree, or see if they see a problem about, if you do it this way, we're going to have a harder time marketing this, or we're going to have a harder time selling this. So know this upfront. And that is why if it is as a PM, because you own the overall success of your product, it is your job, if it is not happening from the other side, if it is your job to be the proactive one, and really engage and really understand from a marketing perspective, what does the marketing department care about? What KPIs do they really care about? And if they are very different from your product KPIs, then understand where is the balance. And if there's too much of a gap, you already know that at the tail end, when you're trying to roll out a product, you're not going to really see what you were hoping for. You're not going to get the adoption that you were really hoping for. So again, be the empathetic one. Really understand what does your marketing partner need to succeed, and see how you can blend it with your own success criteria, and do this early on. So, and finally, obviously, there are so many other stakeholders that we kind of talk through and work with. And you want to kind of take the spirit and apply it in any and all stakeholders that you work on. Based on the sector or the domain you work on, a lot of the times you're going to have to work with compliance and legal and risk team, and many other stakeholders. You have to kind of really understand. And sometimes it's possible that some of those stakeholders' knowledges are so specialized that you probably do not know a lot. That is fine. Go and ask. Sit down with them and tell them that I really want to understand this process. I've never learned it. Can you really explain what is your process of going about evaluating the product and the risk, so that I understand and I can look out for those even before you tell me? And again, so proactiveness is really the key here. And you are being proactive at building all the important and critical relationships with all your stakeholders and showing that you really care. And what this really does is it makes your stakeholders realize that you not only care about your own piece that you're working on, you really care about their success also, which really makes them your friend. And you believe me, you really need that friendship. As I said, product management is a team sport. You cannot do your job if nobody else is doing their part, and you do not have authority. So you have to influence. And the way you influence is by applying lots of empathy and really show that you are here to collaborate and to accomplish a common goal that everybody else cares about. So yes, not really rocket science. A lot of you probably thinking that, yes, it makes sense. I know about empathy. I understand it. But again, the other thing to really know is that even if it sounds common sense is not always very common. So keeping reminders in front of you is really useful. And the fact that I wanted to focus on not just applying empathy on customer development, but all these other aspects of your area, it's because I have seen from my own experience that people actually do not put enough thought into this. They sometimes kind of bypass this aspect, where I feel in the beginning, that is what it should be your main focus, because unless and until you build a really strong and supportive network, you can't really do anything as a product manager, because you're really dependent on all of these stakeholders to do anything. So as I said, reminders are good. So I thought it's good to have some cheat sheet. Again, no rocket science, but some reminders are good for all of us, right? And again, this is something because I've been managing teams for some time and I talk about this with my team, they all sound very simple, but then we tend to forget, because as many of the questions that we were getting before, we are all too busy. So unless and until it's top of your mind, you will skip it, because you will think that some of these more soft relationship things are not really that important. So keep a reminder in front of you. And this is, again, a quick summary and a quick reminder, pretty much all the topics that I kind of talked about where you really apply your empathy. So I'm not going to go into the detail, because this is pretty much kind of restating all of the same facts, but at a high level, customer development, as we already talked about, you really apply empathy to really understand your persona, so that you know the exact pain point that you need to solve for. Easy. But then it's also all the other areas and how you carry yourself across your entire, almost, I would say, product life cycle, right? Starting from finding a PM job, really understanding the hiring manager's pain point, and focusing and positioning yourself as the right product that your recruiter really needs. Then in a new job, not rushing to judgment, be the listener first, understand their context, understand their reality and limitations before you start making changes. Then we talked about our key stakeholders. There are our engineers, as I said, very important, and it's important for both our engineers, designers, marketing, or any other stakeholders that we're talking about, agree on upfront and understand the ownerships and boundaries, and know what are the gray areas, because there will be a lot, but then agree on it, that where you need to have the discussions, and also agree on sometimes that you kind of need to agree to disagree. And overall, I would say about with stakeholders that you need to pick your battles. And these are very common questions that there is really no way for us to get through this. I have a very strong opinion, and my stakeholder has a different opinion. How do we solve this? And the reality is that compromise is key here. As a product manager, you need to realize that you probably can't win all the time. There are other priorities. There are probably other high-level business goals which can override your decision tactically. And that is okay, as long as you kind of know the company North Star and you know that, fine, in the upcoming quarter, I'm not really able to do what I was really planning to do, but I can work around it, because in the following quarter, we can get back on track. And that is okay. You do not, as a product manager, need to win all the time. Because remember, if you lose your stakeholders as your friends, then you completely lost. So relationship is really key here for you to be really effective and have a long-term successful career as a product manager. So simple, right? Go and be empathetic. Thank you.
As always, this presentation will also be posted to our SlideShare channel. And a big thank you from me, Jordan Bergtraum, Head of Product at Equip ID, and to everyone else who joined us today, and the Product Mentor. And don't forget, if you're interested in being a product mentor like Brian, product people of all sorts, visit theproductmentor.com and sign up today. They're always looking for good, willing, strong, talented mentors. And if you're looking to fill a new product job with a great product person, visit our very own free job board at theproductjobs.com.